The Zephyrian High Council had never faced a decision of such magnitude. For 3 rotations, their finest military strategists, xenobiologists, and cultural analysts had pored over every scrap of intelligence gathered about the species that called themselves humans. What they discovered should have been impossible for any sapient race to survive, let alone thrive with. Terra, or Earth, as the humans called their homeworld, was classified as a Class 12 death world, a designation so extreme that only 17 such planets had ever been catalogued in the known galaxy. The atmospheric composition alone should have been lethal. $20% oxygen, creating an environment so combustible that a single spark could trigger cascading fires. The gravity well measured 9.8 meters per second squared, nearly double what the galactic community considered the upper limit for complex life development. But these were merely the baseline conditions. The planet's surface was 70 to 1% covered in a corrosive solvent, dihydrogen monoxide in its liquid form, that fell from the sky in torrential downpours capable of flooding entire continents. Massive tectonic plates ground against each other with such violence that mountains thrust upward thousands of meters, while others collapsed into abyssal trenches. Electromagnetic storms of incredible intensity regularly swept across the surface, generating billions of volts of electrical discharge. The magnetic field fluctuated wildly, occasionally reversing entirely and exposing the surface to lethal radiation bursts from their star. Yet somehow, impossibly, this world had not only produced sapient life, but had fostered the development of a species so adapted to extreme conditions that they had conquered their entire planet and were now reaching toward the stars. Admiral HFY of the Zephyrian Defense Fleet studied the holographic display showing Earth's orbital mechanics. "Look at this," he said, his gill slits fluttering with agitation. "Their planet doesn't even maintain a stable axial tilt. It wobbles like a damaged gyroscope, creating what they call seasons. Regular, predictable periods where entire hemispheres become uninhabitable due to temperature extremes." Dr. Yilan, the fleet's chief xenobiologist, activated another display. "The seasonal variations are actually the least concerning aspect. Observe their weather patterns." The hologram shifted to show swirling masses of atmospheric disturbance. These hurricanes and tornadoes generate wind speeds exceeding 300 kilometers per hour. The pressure differentials create acoustic phenomena that can rupture cellular structures. And yet, humans not only survive these events, they have learned to predict and prepare for them as routine occurrences. Commander Zilf, tactical specialist for asymmetric warfare, leaned forward. "Show them the biological analysis." The display changed again, revealing a cross-section of human anatomy. "This is where our intelligence becomes truly disturbing," Dr. Yilan continued. "Humans are not just adapted to their death world. They are evolutionary products of constant warfare with their environment and each other. Their skeletal structure is composed of a calcium phosphate composite that can withstand impacts of tremendous force. Their muscle fiber density is approximately 40% higher than the galactic average, and their cardiovascular system operates under pressures that would cause immediate cardiac failure in most species." Admiral HFY studied the readouts with growing unease. "What's their average lifespan under these conditions?" "Between 70 and 100 rotations of their homeworld around their star," Dr. Yilan replied. "But here's what our analysts found most troubling. They don't consider this impressive. In their historical records, they speak of these lifespans as short and constantly seek ways to extend them further. The implications hung in the air like a toxic cloud. A species that lived for a century on a death world considered their time inadequate. What kind of mental framework produced such thinking? Cultural analyst Wren activated her portion of the presentation. "This brings us to the psychological profile, which may be more disturbing than their physical capabilities. Humans have what they term persistence hunting, encoded into their behavioral patterns. When pursuing a goal, they demonstrate an ability to maintain focus and effort far beyond the point where most species would abandon the attempt. Their literature is filled with concepts they call never give up, failure is not an option, and death before dishonor." She paused, allowing the translation algorithms to process the alien concepts. "They have cultural practices specifically designed to strengthen themselves through adversity. They call it training or working out, deliberately subjecting themselves to controlled stress, damage, and exhaustion so that they become more capable of handling extreme situations. They have entire institutions dedicated to preparing individuals for warfare, natural disasters, and survival in hostile environments. Commander Zilth pulled up tactical assessments. Their military capabilities reflect this mentality. They don't just prepare for war, they assume it as an inevitable condition. Their historical records show nearly continuous conflict for their entire documented existence. They have developed weapons capable of rendering their own planet uninhabitable multiple times over, yet they continue to improve and expand their arsenal. Admiral Kefar felt his respiratory system constrict. Are you telling me they have the capability to destroy their own world? Not just the capability, they've built enough weapons to do it several dozen times over, Marta Zilth confirmed. And they call this condition peace through strength, or mutually assured destruction. They've turned the threat of planetary annihilation into a diplomatic strategy. The silence that followed was profound. The Zephyrian High Council had authorized this intelligence gathering because humanity's first interstellar probe had been detected entering their territorial space. The probe itself was primitive by galactic standards, a simple fusion-powered vessel carrying basic sensor packages and communication equipment. But the implications of its existence were staggering. A Deathworld species had not only achieved spaceflight but was actively seeking contact with other civilizations. Dr. Yilan activated a final display. There's more. Our long-range sensors have detected additional human spacecraft throughout their local stellar region. They're not just exploring, they're expanding. In the 50 rotations since they achieved interstellar capability, they've established permanent installations on 14 different worlds, including 3 that our own surveys classified as uninhabitable. Vren added, their expansion patterns show no signs of slowing. If anything, they appear to be accelerating. Our predictive models suggest they'll have a presence in over 100 star systems within the next 2 centuries. The strategic implications were clear. Humanity wasn't just another emerging species requesting membership in the galactic community. They were a force of nature expanding outward from one of the most hostile environments ever discovered, carrying with them adaptations and capabilities that had been forged in conditions that would kill most known species within hours. Admiral Kethvar made the decision that would define the next phase of galactic history. We prepare for war, he announced. Not because we want conflict, but because we must be ready for every possibility when dealing with a species this alien to our understanding. If humans are as dangerous as our analysis suggests, we need to be prepared to defend ourselves and our allies. The preparation that followed was unlike anything in Zephyrian military history. Every simulation, every strategic scenario, every contingency plan was designed around the assumption that humans represented an existential threat. They mobilized their most advanced fleet, equipped with weapons systems designed to neutralize threats from a distance before they could close to effective combat range. They developed specialized armor and life support systems to protect their personnel from the kinds of environmental extremes that humans apparently considered normal living conditions. 3 months of intensive preparation followed. The Zephyrian Defense Fleet became the most formidable military force their civilization had ever assembled. Allies from 6 different species contributed ships, technology, and personnel. The combined fleet represented the pinnacle of galactic military achievement. 1,500 vessels, advanced AI targeting systems, weapons capable of sterilizing entire continents, and defensive systems that could withstand direct hits from stellar-class energy discharges. They were as ready for war as any civilization could be. What they discovered when they finally made contact with humanity would shatter every assumption they had made about the nature of strength, survival, and what it meant to be a sapient species in a hostile universe. Part 2. The Encounter. First contact occurred in the Kepler 442 system, where human colonists had established what they called a research station on a planet that Zephyrian surveys had classified as completely uninhabitable. The world's surface temperature averaged -40 degrees Celsius, with atmospheric pressure so low that most known species would experience cellular decompression within seconds of exposure. Sulfuric compounds in the atmosphere created an environment so corrosive that standard hull materials would dissolve within days. The humans had not only built a functioning colony on this hellscape, they were expanding it. Admiral Kethvar ordered the combined fleet to assume battle formation at the edge of the system. Sensor arrays immediately began cataloging the human installation, expecting to find evidence of the massive industrial infrastructure that would be necessary to sustain life in such conditions. What they found instead defied all logical explanation. The human facility was remarkably small, perhaps 3 dozen structures connected by enclosed walkways, with minimal energy signatures and no detectable weapon systems. Long-range scans revealed approximately 200 human inhabitants going about what appeared to be routine daily activities. They were mining operations, atmospheric processes, hydroponic farms, and what seemed to be recreational facilities. Recreational facilities on a planet where the environment was actively trying to kill every living thing that existed. Commander Zilf activated the tactical analysis systems. Admiral, I'm detecting no defensive installations, no weapons platforms, no shield generators. Either they're using technology so advanced that our sensors can't detect it, or... He paused, unwilling to voice the obvious conclusion. Or they don't consider this location worth defending. Admiral Kethvar finished. How is that possible? Dr. Yelan was studying the biological sensors. I'm reading human life signs throughout the facility. They appear to be functioning normally. No signs of stress, elevated heart rates, or emergency metabolic states. According to our instruments, they're going about their activities as if this were a completely routine environment. The contradiction was mentally jarring. The Zephyrians had assembled the largest military fleet in their history to confront what they assumed would be a species of warrior survivors, only to find what appeared to be a peaceful research colony in conditions that should have required massive technological support systems just to maintain basic survival. Admiral Kefauver made the decision to initiate communication protocols. A standard first contact package was transmitted. Mathematical sequences, periodic table representations, and basic linguistic frameworks. The response came within minutes, transmitted in clear, well-structured galactic standard. Greetings to the unknown vessels. This is Dr. Elena Rodriguez, Director of Kepler-Craddock 442 Research Station. Welcome to our little corner of the galaxy. Would you like to come down for coffee? The casual tone of the invitation sent ripples of confusion through the command structure. Commander Zilf checked his translation algorithms 3 times before confirming the accuracy. They're inviting us to visit. For a beverage. Admiral Kethvar considered the tactical implications. Standard first contact protocols required extensive preliminary negotiations, security assessments, and gradual introduction processes. The humans were suggesting immediate face-to-face interaction as if they were greeting neighbors. Could this be some kind of trap, he wondered aloud. Vren pulled up psychological profiles. Based on our cultural analysis, this behavior is consistent with human social patterns. They tend to approach new situations with what they call cautious optimism. They prepare for problems but hope for positive outcomes. After an hour of debate, Admiral Kethvar made an unprecedented decision. He would personally lead a small diplomatic mission to the human facility, escorted by a single ship with full defensive capabilities. The rest of the fleet would remain at combat readiness but would maintain position at the edge of the system. The journey to Kepler 442b took 6 hours. As their shuttle descended through the planet's toxic atmosphere, environmental sensors screamed warnings about hull integrity, atmospheric composition, and surface conditions. The Zephyrian diplomatic team wore full environmental suits and carried emergency life support systems rated for 36 hours of operation. They landed at the coordinates provided by Dr. Rodriguez, expecting to find an airlock leading to a heavily fortified underground complex. Instead, they found a simple landing pad beside what appeared to be a standard modular habitat, with a human figure in basic cold weather gear standing beside it, waving. Dr. Elena Rodriguez was a middle-aged human female with graying hair and laugh lines around her eyes. She wore insulated clothing appropriate for the surface conditions, but no environmental suit. No breathing apparatus, no protective equipment beyond what the Zephyrians would consider suitable for a moderately cold day. Welcome to Kepler. 442, she called out as they disembarked from their shuttle. Hope the trip wasn't too rough. The atmospheric entry can be a bit bumpy until you get used to it. Admiral Kethvar stared at her through his helmet's visor. Rodriguez, are you not wearing environmental protection? She looked down at her clothing with apparent surprise. Oh! It's just a standard cold weather kit. The atmospheric pressure is a bit low, so we supplement with oxygen masks during extended outdoor activity. But for short periods like this, it's not necessary. The human respiratory system is pretty adaptable. The entire diplomatic team stood in stunned silence. Rodriguez was casually existing in conditions that would kill them within minutes, and she considered it a minor inconvenience requiring minimal precautions. Would you like to come inside? She continued. It's warmer in the habitat, and I've got coffee ready. Fair warning, it's Earth blend. so it might be a bit strong for non-human metabolisms. The interior of the human facility defied every expectation the Zephyrians had developed. Rather than the sterile, heavily reinforced emergency shelter they had anticipated, they found a comfortable, lived-in space that could have been transported from any peaceful research installation in the galaxy. There were plants growing in hydroponic gardens, recreational areas with gaming equipment and books, and common areas where humans gathered for meals and conversation. Dr. Rodriguez led them to a conference room where several other humans were waiting. She made introductions with the same casual friendliness she might have used for visiting colleagues from another university. This is Dr. James Chen, our geological specialist. Sarah Williams, atmospheric engineer. Marcus Thompson, our mining operations coordinator. And this is Lieutenant Colonel Maria Santos, who handles security and emergency response. Admiral Kefvar focused on the military representative. Finally, someone who might provide insight into human defensive capabilities. Lieutenant Colonel Santos. We were surprised not to detect any significant defensive installations. How do you maintain security for the colony? Santos smiled with what appeared to be genuine amusement. Security out here is mostly about environmental hazards and equipment failures. We've got standard emergency protocols for atmospheric storms, seismic activity, that sort of thing. Are you concerned about some kind of external threat? Commander Zilf leaned forward. Dr. Rodriguez, our analysis of your homeworld suggests that your species has extensive experience with warfare and conflict. We expected to find more military preparation. Dr. Rodriguez exchanged glances with her colleagues. Oh, you mean Earth's history? Yes, we've had our share of conflicts over the years. But this is a research station, not a military installation. Our mission here is to study extremophile organisms and test terraforming techniques. We're scientists, not soldiers. The disconnect was becoming more profound by the minute. Admiral Kefvar tried a different approach. Our intelligence suggests that humans are capable of surviving in conditions that would be lethal to most species. How do you accomplish this? Dr. Chen answered. It's mostly about understanding the environment and preparing accordingly. This planet isn't really that hostile once you know what you're dealing with. The low atmospheric pressure just means we need supplemental oxygen for heavy work. The cold requires good insulation and heating systems. The soil chemistry needs neutralization before we can grow food crops. It's all pretty standard terraforming work. Standard? Commander Zilf's voice cracked slightly. This planet is classified as uninhabitable by Galactic survey standards. Sarah Williams laughed. Uninhabitable is a pretty relative term. I've worked on Mars, Europa, and 3 different asteroid mining operations. Compared to some of those places, Kepler 442 is practically a vacation resort. At least it has gravity and a real atmosphere. The implications of her casual statement slowly sank in. Humans weren't just surviving on one death world. They were routinely working and living in multiple environments that the galactic community considered impossible for complex life. Lieutenant Colonel Santos seemed to notice their stunned silence. Is everything okay? You all look a bit stressed. Admiral Kefvar made a decision that would later be considered either brilliant diplomacy or complete madness. Dr. Rodriguez, I need to be honest with you. We came here prepared for war. Our analysis of your species and your homeworld led us to conclude that humans represented a potential existential threat to galactic civilization. We assembled the largest military fleet in our history to make first contact with you. The room fell silent. The humans exchanged looks that seemed to combine surprise, concern, and something that might have been sadness. Dr. Rodriguez spoke carefully. Admiral, why would you think we were a threat? Dr. Cooks, Yilan pulled up his biological analysis. Your species evolved on a planet that should have been uninhabitable. Your physical capabilities exceed those of any known sapient race. Your history shows constant warfare and the development of weapons capable of planetary destruction. Our models suggested that any species capable of surviving such conditions would necessarily be extremely aggressive and territorial. Marcus Thompson shook his head slowly. You know, this explains a lot about why nobody's made contact before. You've been looking at our worst qualities and assuming they define us. But don't they? Commander Zilf asked. How can a species develop such capabilities without becoming inherently violent? Lieutenant Colonel Santos answered, because the same traits that help you survive in a hostile environment also help you cooperate with others. When your world is trying to kill you every day, you learn that working together is the only way to make it through. Yeah, humans can be violent when we need to be. But we can also be incredibly collaborative, innovative, and protective of others. Dr. Rodriguez nodded. The reason we've survived on Earth isn't because we're the strongest or the most aggressive. It's because we're adaptable. We learn. We cooperate. We find ways to turn challenges into opportunities. The same traits that helped our ancestors survive ice ages and volcanic eruptions are what drive us to explore space and reach out to other species. Admiral Cathvar felt something fundamental shifting in his understanding. So when you invited us down for coffee, I was genuinely excited to meet another spacefaring species. Dr. Rodriguez confirmed. We've been hoping for contact for decades. The universe is a big, dangerous place, but it's also full of amazing possibilities. We'd rather explore it with friends than face it alone. The conversation continued for hours as the two species began the slow process of actually understanding each other. What the Zephyrians discovered challenged every assumption they had made about the relationship between environmental hardship, survival capabilities, and social behavior. Humans were indeed incredibly capable survivors, but that capability hadn't made them inherently aggressive or territorial. Instead, it had made them intensely curious about the universe and eager to share their knowledge and experiences with others. They approached new challenges, including first contact with alien species, with the same combination of careful preparation and optimistic engagement that had allowed them to thrive on a death world. As Admiral Cathvar prepared to return to his fleet, Dr. Rodriguez made an offer that would reshape galactic civilization. Would you like to see what we've learned about making hostile environments habitable? I think our species might have a lot to teach each other. Part 3. The Revelation. The months following first contact became known as the Great Relearning among the species of the galactic community. What began as a military confrontation evolved into the most significant exchange of knowledge and perspective in recorded galactic history. The implications of human capabilities and philosophy rippled outward from the Kepler 442 system, challenging fundamental assumptions about survival, cooperation, and the nature of intelligence itself. Admiral Cathvar's fleet remained in the system, but their mission transformed from military preparedness to intensive cultural and technological exchange. Teams of specialists from both species worked together to understand how humans had developed such remarkable adaptability and what it might mean for other civilizations facing environmental challenges. Dr. Yilan published a series of papers that would become foundational texts in xenobiology. His research revealed that human adaptability wasn't just a product of their harsh homeworld. It was a deliberate cultural trait that they had cultivated and refined over millennia. Humans didn't just survive in hostile environments. They actively sought them out as opportunities for growth and learning. The human concept of challenge is fundamentally different from how most species understand difficulty. Dr. Yilan explained in his landmark paper. Where we see obstacles to be avoided or overcome, humans see opportunities for development and improvement. They have culturally encoded this perspective into what they call embracing the suck, finding value and meaning in difficult experiences. The evidence was overwhelming once they began looking for it. Humans regularly engaged in activities that other species would consider unnecessary hardship, climbing mountains that served no strategic purpose, swimming in turbulent oceans for recreation, running vast distances purely for personal satisfaction. They had formalized these behaviors into systems they called sports, adventure, and extreme activities. Even more remarkably, they extended this philosophy to intellectual and emotional challenges. Human educational systems deliberately exposed young people to complex problems, failure experiences, and progressively difficult tasks. Their literatures celebrated characters who overcame adversity through persistence and growth. Their cultural narratives consistently reinforced the idea that strength came not from avoiding difficulty, but from learning to thrive within it. Vren's cultural analysis team discovered something even more profound. Humans had developed this philosophy not despite their hostile environment, but because of their recognition that environments would always contain elements of hostility, rather than seeking perfect safety, which they understood to be impossible. They had chosen to become the kind of beings who could find opportunity and meaning in any circumstances they encountered. Humans operate from a fundamental assumption that the universe is inherently challenging, Vren reported. But rather than viewing this as a problem to be solved, they view it as the basic condition of existence to be embraced. This allows them to approach new difficulties not with fear or resentment, but with curiosity and determination. The technological implications were equally staggering. Human engineering wasn't just about creating tools to overcome environmental obstacles. It was about creating systems that could adapt and improve under stress. Their spacecraft were designed to function in conditions that would destroy conventional technology. Their habitation systems could be rapidly reconfigured for different environmental conditions. Their manufacturing processes could utilize raw materials that other species considered unusable waste products. But perhaps most importantly, their social and organizational structures reflected the same adaptive philosophy. Human societies had developed incredible diversity in approaches to governance, economics, and social organization, allowing them to function effectively in widely varying conditions. They didn't seek one perfect system. They developed multiple approaches and selected the most effective for each situation. Commander Zilf spent considerable time studying human military doctrine and was amazed to discover that their approach to warfare reflected the same philosophical foundation. Human military strategy isn't primarily about destroying opponents, he reported. It's about adapting more quickly and effectively than the opposition. They assume that any conflict will involve unexpected developments and changing conditions, so they train to be flexible rather than simply powerful. This revelation had profound implications for the assembled fleet. The Zephyrians had prepared for war based on the assumption that a species as capable as humans would necessarily be aggressive and expansionist. What they discovered instead was a species that had developed their capabilities specifically to avoid the need for aggression. Dr. Rodriguez arranged for Zephyrian specialists to visit human colonies throughout the local stellar region. What they found was a pattern of development that prioritized sustainability, cooperation, and adaptation over conquest or exploitation. Human colonies weren't military outposts or resource extraction operations. They were communities designed to thrive in diverse environments while maintaining positive relationships with their surroundings. The colony on Proxima Centauri B dealt with constant radiation exposure by developing biotechnology that actually benefited from high-energy particle bombardment. The installation in the Tau Ceti system had transformed a barely habitable world into a thriving ecological preserve that supported both human inhabitants and indigenous life forms. The mining operation in the Kepler 438 system had developed closed-loop resource cycling that actually improved the planetary environment while extracting needed materials. Each colony demonstrated the same pattern: humans encountering a challenging environment, understanding its specific characteristics, and finding ways to not just survive, but to create mutually beneficial relationships with their surroundings. Admiral Kethvar found himself reconsidering everything he thought he understood about strength, survival, and civilization. We prepared for war because we assumed that any species capable of thriving in hostile conditions would be hostile themselves, he reflected in his personal log. What we discovered is a species that has learned to thrive by finding ways to make hostile conditions less hostile for everyone. The human approach to first contact exemplified their broader philosophy. Rather than viewing the arrival of an alien fleet as a threat to be repelled or an opportunity for conquest, they had seen it as a chance for mutual learning and benefit. Rodriguez's casual invitation for coffee wasn't naivety or weakness. It was confidence based on a genuine belief that most intelligent beings, given the opportunity, would prefer cooperation to conflict. This confidence wasn't blind optimism. Humans prepared extensively for the possibility of hostile contact, but they didn't allow those preparations to define their initial approach. They exemplified what they called hope for the best, prepare for the worst, a philosophy that allowed them to engage hopefully while remaining capable of protecting themselves if necessary. Lieutenant Colonel Santos provided perhaps the most illuminating insight into human thinking during one of the later exchanges. "You keep asking about our military capabilities and our survival skills as if they're separate from our social values," she observed. "But they're not separate at all. We develop the ability to survive harsh conditions because we value life, our own and others. We develop military capabilities because we want to protect the people and communities we care about. The strength isn't separate from the caring. It exists because of the caring." The implications of this perspective extended far beyond human-Zephyrian relations. As word of the first contact spread throughout the galactic community, species after species began re-evaluating their own approaches to environmental challenges, social organization, and interstellar relations. The Altarian collective, which had struggled for centuries with the environmental degradation of their homeworld, requested human assistance in developing adaptive technologies. The result was a collaboration that not only addressed the immediate environmental crisis, but established principles for sustainable development that would influence planetary management throughout the galaxy. The Rigelian Trade Federation, which had based their entire economy on exploiting short-term resource advantages, began incorporating human concepts of long-term adaptive planning. Their economic systems became more resilient and more capable of maintaining stability through changing conditions. Most significantly, the discovery of human adaptive philosophy influenced the galactic community's approach to unknown phenomena and emerging challenges. Rather than defaulting to defensive postures or avoidance strategies, member species began developing what became known as adaptive engagement protocols, approaches that prioritized learning, flexibility, and collaborative problem-solving over rigid preparation for specific anticipated scenarios. Rodriguez's research station on Kepler 442b became the site of the first Interspecies Adaptive Research Institute, where teams of scientists and engineers from dozens of different species worked together to develop solutions for the most challenging environmental conditions in the galaxy. The principles they developed: understanding before judging, adapting rather than forcing, growing through challenge rather than avoiding it, became foundational concepts in galactic civilization. The transformation wasn't limited to scientific and technological domains. Human art, literature, and cultural practices spread throughout the galaxy, carrying with them perspectives on resilience, growth, and the relationship between individual development and community well-being. The human concept of post-traumatic growth, the idea that individuals and societies could emerge stronger and more capable after experiencing significant challenges, influenced therapeutic practices, educational systems, and social support structures across hundreds of worlds. Admiral Cathvar's final report to the Zephyrian High Council summarized the transformation. "We prepared for war with a species we believed to be inherently dangerous. What we discovered was a species that had learned to find opportunity and meaning in danger itself. They didn't conquer their hostile homeworld, they learned to dance with it. They didn't develop their capabilities to threaten others. They developed them to better serve their communities and protect what they valued. The strength we feared was not the strength of a predator, but the strength of a gardener who had learned to help flowers bloom in harsh soil." The document that began as a military threat assessment became the foundation for what historians would later call the Adaptive Renaissance, a period of unprecedented cooperation, innovation, and growth throughout the galactic community. The species that had prepared for war with humanity instead learned from them that the greatest strength came not from the ability to destroy one's enemies, but from the ability to transform challenges into opportunities for growth, connection, and mutual flourishing. The man who destroys his weak self can never be destroyed by others, because he has learned that true strength comes not from avoiding difficulty, but from growing through it. The species that embraces this principle becomes not a threat to be feared, but a partner to be valued, a source of wisdom, capability, and hope in a universe that will always present new challenges to be faced together. In the end, the Zephyrians and their allies learned that humans called their incredible capabilities basic, not because they underestimated their significance, but because they understood that these capabilities were simply the foundation for something much greater: the ability to help others develop their own strength, to find joy and meaning in the face of uncertainty, and to build communities that could thrive no matter what challenges the universe might present. The war they had prepared for became instead a partnership that would define the next epoch of galactic civilization, an epoch characterized not by the dominance of the strong over the weak, but by the collective growth of all beings toward greater wisdom, capability, and compassion. In learning from humanity, the galaxy learned that the greatest victories were not won through conquest, but through the patient work of helping others become the best versions of themselves. End of document.